So I'll tell you, I had this healthy, vibrant, amazing child named Anna. And she grew up in a family that loved and cherished her and did everything we could to nurture her. She was this wonderful, vibrant, alive, spirited, really personable, really talented young woman. And she loved photography, she loved writing, she was an artist. She worked with people with severe developmental disabilities, and she treated everyone with dignity and respect. And then she got mental illness, and she was diagnosed when she was 16 years old with anorexia, which is an eating disorder that affects millions of Americans. So Anna went into treatment for her illness, and she did great while she was in the program. It was all outpatient at that time. She recovered. She went on, finished high school, went on to college, and was thriving in that environment, loved being away at college, and came home between her sophomore and freshman year during the summer. And it became apparent pretty quickly that she had relapsed into a full-blown eating disorder, anorexia. So we got her back into the treatment center. This time she was critically ill. This time her heart was failing, her liver was malfunctioning. And this time when we took her back to get the treatment she needed, we ran into issues with our insurance company, going against what the physicians were telling us and what her treatment team were telling us. She was not able to get the care she needed. Eating disorders are the only mental illness that people actually die from because of the nature of the illnesses affect the whole body. Even when Anna was battling her eating disorder, I truly had people say things to me that were so unenlightened and so confusing and blaming. So Anna's starving to death and fighting for her life. A friend of mine trying to be helpful, trying to offer me some good advice. And she said, well, can't you just make her eat? I mean, if it was that simple, she would not be fighting for her life. It's not about the food. It's not about her being willful and not eating. The eating disorder is almost another entity. Anna actually would tell me what it was like inside her head. It was almost for her like being in an abusive relationship. This voice telling her she was worthless, she was horrible, she was ugly, she was fat, she was disgusting. If you lost more weight, then everything would be fine. And we used to talk about what would satisfy the eating disorder. When would it leave her alone? And she looked at me like I was like from outer space, and she goes, never. It wants me dead. After Anna died, we were writing her obituary, and the funeral director is helping us. And he said, well, you know, with somebody that dies of suicide or dies of a mental illness, very often families, you know, as a cause of death, or, you know, open it with, you know, Anna Weston died suddenly at home on February 17th. And I just looked at him and looked at the rest of my family, and I said, why would we say that? She died of an illness. I am not ashamed of her. And I'm not going to hide the fact, and that's when I realized that maybe her story could help someone else live. So when the obituary was published the next day, within a day or two, we started getting phone calls. Donations started flooding in. The funeral director called us and said, what do you want me to do with all this? There's cards. There's lots and lots of cards and letters coming for you from perfect strangers thanking us for naming it and talking about how that truly gave them the courage to talk about it with somebody they cared about. Apparently, because it was so unusual to have anybody write that in an obituary, the press picked up on it. And you know, this was pretty raw back then. And I originally said, I can't do that. And my husband, who was actually trained in journalism, said, you know, we said we wanted to raise awareness. We said that we wanted to help other people. We need to do this. And so we actually let one of the local TV stations come to her funeral. And then that set off this whole wave of other magazine articles, and it really brought national attention to this issue. A psychiatrist named Dr. Walter Kay said to me that Anna had a brain disorder and that's why she died. It wasn't anything that I did or didn't do. It was that she had a brain illness. And I remember feeling this huge sense of relief. I can let go of feeling like somehow I wasn't a good enough mom and I wasn't able to protect her or save her, and use that same energy that was going into feeling guilt and horror and all of that into trying to do something positive. There was no residential care beds available when Anna needed that in Minnesota. And we really felt strongly that had that been available, and if we could have gotten her access to that level of care, I think she'd be alive today. So one of our goals was to try to make that happen, and we were actually able to realize that goal pretty early on and started what is still called the Anna Weston House, which was the first residential treatment program for people with eating disorders in Minnesota. It's just so warm, and it's just got this beautiful natural light. A few years ago, we merged Anna Weston Foundation with the Emily Program Foundation. I think the thing that our family is proudest of is that there's people today actually getting the treatment they need and are alive today because that is available. I remember many times being with Paul Wellstone and doing press conferences with him, and in true Wellstone fashion, him shaking his fist and talking about mental health parity as a civil rights issue. One of Anna's last journal entries says something like, "May your dreaming never end and your voice never die." So the advocacy, the having that voice to be able to talk about this and expect that you're going to be treated with the utmost dignity and compassion and all of those things. I think Anna really intended that. The ability to talk about it and encourage other people to tell their stories and talk about it is probably the most powerful tool in reducing stigma and shame.